And most Nigerian leaders elected since 1999 lack character, values to uplift the country. And unfortunately for OBJ, he was also elected in 1999 and he did 2 terms. And I just are asking question, our father, the statesman, you were also elected in 1999. So are you saying you are part of those people, or are you excluding yourself from that list? And then if you check it, actually, you see that most persons that have ruled this country in one capacity or the other, treated people unfairly, and then, made several statements that, almost threw the country, into turmoil, and it's a problem in this country, and so it's something we really need to look at. But I just also asking, Baba, are you part of this? And then can you even name people, who lack character, who have ruled this country right from 1999? And I want to believe that the president is not just talking about the past president; he's also talking about the governors, the senators, and then the lawmakers, and even the civil servants, because in a way most of them work with this administration. Even the aides to this politician, some of them make certain statement, and you begin to wonder, if they actually, know what they are supposed to do as an aide to somebody. So this is the conversation this morning. People who have ruled Nigeria from 1999 lack character. What do you make of that, statement?
I think the first that will come to mind is to laugh, especially because it's also indicted in what he said in his statement to say, well, it's part of them. But I think it's a fair share if he says that is also part of them, right? Sometimes if you want to capture a demographic, if you put yourself, it makes sense to say, okay, well, I'm part of this too, and I can't say I was also culpable in a lot of ways. I might not have done the things that I ought to do and all of that. But I think the statement is valid. And for some reason, I was trying to read into it. I said most Nigerian leaders elected since 1999 lack character, one, values to uplift country. So the evidence is quite obvious. Where have you been from 1999 to 2026? Where is the country in terms of the economy, in terms of the people, in terms of every other sector in the country? So I think this is valid because I can as well, as a person, say this because I feel from what I've seen since 1999, thank God I've been alive since then. And so I know what has been the trajectory. I know what has happened. In fact, I think it's getting better. Maybe not. A lot of persons might argue that there are some things that are maybe on the macroeconomic level that are getting better. But a good number of persons will say it doesn't really reflect on the average Nigerian to say, what do you say is getting better, especially with this administration saying they've done a lot of macroeconomic policies that is affecting And it's a lot of development from them. But it's just to say that, are we where we want to be? No. But can we get a yes? But I think what the former President Olusegun Obasanjo said is very important. It's very important because it's not really to pinpoint, it's not to lay an accusing finger on somebody, but it's just to say that we're not doing what is right. We can do better. So it depends on how leaders want it. Some will come out and say they will reject, they will give a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, why would you say such a thing? That means you're also part of us. We are doing what we are doing. It's you that did not do. And we can go on and on and on. But the conversation really should be, what can we do better? From 1999 to 2026, where is Nigeria? Let's look at all the templates too. Let's look at some other countries. Where were they in 1999, for example? Maybe some African countries. And where are they now? Are we making progress? If we are making progress, how much of progress are we making? Let's give out a KPI for this country, the key performance index of every administration and every political leader in the country. And this statement will be validly correct, because if you check, many administrations have come and gone, but the Nigerian people are still suffering. It's still the same story. The same story in 1999. I listened to Fela Nicola Pokutin. I listened to some of his songs way back, and I'm asking questions like, okay, so if you were complaining about this, I don't want to mention some of the things. Some of them are vulgar. Some of the words, the names he calls some people, I don't want to go into that. But he made mention of something. So if I did not really witness like a mature adult what happened way back, I think I know what's obtainable now. So from the songs we've heard from Fela, from Obe, from some people that the Shoki, from a good number of them too, I can actually say that this statement is valid. We are not where we are. Our political leaders have not sustained values and character. And character might not just be, maybe respecting people, cultural character like you call it, but character is the ability to continue a resolution long after the excitement of that moment has passed. It's like something to keep doing, the resilience, the effort to make things better. And I think to say that the country has not been uplifted since 1999 is a valid statement. But what can we take from this conversation? We can indict Baba because he has indicted himself. Very true. But what more can we say except to demand accountability, responsibility, and resilience from our leaders?
Exactly. And then I think one of my lecturers said something, I think a few years back. He said, maybe there is something fundamentally wrong with an African man. And then you see that for some persons, education has a way of making them unlearn certain things. And for some, change of environment. When you are very educated, you begin to drop certain notions. You say, I don't want to follow this mentality anymore. When you change environment, especially when you leave the shores of this country or maybe Africa, entirely, and then you discover that, things are much better, in certain spaces compared to this country or this continent. And the Baba also said something. He said, Africa must rethink its culture of winner takes all democracy. And he said that, this system that we're practicing was, adopted, from the British. And I also remember that the sage, Obafemi Awolowo said something before he passed. He said, when you adopt a foreign system and you don't domesticate, it will never work. Because we adopted this foreign system, the presidential system of government, even the parliamentary system of government that we adopted at first. It's not our own, it's not homegrown. And then the people who adopted it, who passed it, they didn't take their time to domesticate. Because, for a country like UK or US, you can't compare it to Nigeria. We have our own we have our own, I don't know what to call it now, we have our own differences now in terms of, people, in terms of, idea, in terms of, I don't know, mentality, if you ask me. So I think one thing that we should do is to find a way to domesticate the systems. Because someone said something that if the best president in the world now, the person even mentioned Obama, I don't know whether he's the best president in the world, he said, if he should come and rule Nigeria, he will still fail. And that should tell you that it's not really about the person who is ruling. It's about the system. The system is faulty. If we don't correct, even the Bible says it, if the foundation is if the foundation is not okay, what would the righteous do? So it's something that we really need to look at, our foundation, our constitution. I think I mentioned it before that much of the 1979 constitution was dumped into 1999. And that's the Fourth Republic that Baba is talking about. So if you take, maybe a register of the people who have ruled this country from 1999, you see that some of them had good intentions. But once they entered, politics like this, once they, had access to some high position, you discover that all that they wanted to do, you will not find it again. Just like Dr. Wale said on this set, common sense left, through the window. So when they are not done serving, that's when they are not talking about, the good things. And you are wondering, but how come when you are in power, you didn't say some of these things. You didn't do some of these things that you were saying. So at the end of the day, we need to be intentional. Our leaders must be more intentional, really.
I think just to add to what you've said, I think it's valid. You took that particular point out of my mouth to say it's a systemic error. Because if it's just one person, then you might say, okay, maybe there's a chance, or two persons, or perhaps three leaders. But if it's like a spectrum of leaders that they are doing the same thing, you can actually tell it's actually a systemic fault, right? And I think just like you also mentioned, I think it's very valid that we think about how Nigeria can move from just being a normal country to being a world power. Maybe African power. I don't want to say word now, but we can get there actually. Nigeria can become like what we used to be to many African nations, where we give loans, where we help people, where we send forces to go and install peace in the country. And I think we can get back to that. We can even become the hub where every African country is coming to look for technology, to look for AI innovations and every other innovation they can use to develop their country. I think we should start looking at building Nigeria to a point where it becomes a world power. I think if we have that focus, even if you don't become a world power, you become an African power. And I think, they say if you shoot for the moon or something, you end up in the stars if you don't get to the moon, that kind of thing. So if we really project upward and do it more, maybe we can get to that point. But like I said, like you said, it's a systemic issue because it's not just happening with one person, two persons. It's not happening to two leaders, four leaders. It's happening to almost all the leaders at the spectrum. So the institution is wrong in itself. The system is wrong, like you said, domesticating some of the policies and maybe the constitution as it were, or whatever we take from the outside world. I think is necessary. But I think the person that's going to do that is going to think differently, which I'm not sure many of our leaders are doing right now. We've talked about some countries who got it better. They got it better because somebody or some people woke up to say, enough of this. Until we come to that point, we must still continue in this situation and keep having the same conversation over and over again. But what I'm looking at, if you ask me, I know what is your intention for Nigeria. I see a Nigeria that is a world power. I see a Nigeria that produces the things it's using. That's not just a consuming economy, but as a producing economy. We want production. We want stuff to go on in the country and want to improve on many of the things we can produce. I've always been saying, I'll keep saying until we get it done. We want drones to be manufactured and assembled in Nigeria. We want security equipment to be used, to be manufactured and maybe assembled in the country. We need those kind of elevations to get ourselves to a position where the world powers will say, oh yeah, Nigeria is also a place to reckon with. So when they form society like the BRICS, they will call Nigeria. When they form society that are great and powerful, they call Nigeria, because Nigeria is also a force to reckon with in Africa and across the world.
Exactly. So let's take comments, from people. Let's feel the pulse of the people on that particular statement. And of course, Anthony Martin Okafor is saying, you can only uplift a nation if you put our first before you. Your children, your wife, your relatives, your colleagues, your party members, and none has done that in Nigeria since 1999. Okay?
Anthony Martin Okafor says, you just need to observe them closely and see for yourself. Self and family-centered, from school corridors to government offices and houses. No shame, no regret, no change of mindset.
Okay, and another comment is saying, Ibrahim Amil Isa, in as much as I agree with OBJ, but he was also the founding father of, really, okay, and that's your opinion, right? In Nigeria, you should stop talking as if it was a saint, okay? Take the next one.
The preacher says, are these leaders not from amongst us, or they came from another planet to rule over us? If the current government functionaries should vacate governance for all of us here to take over, how are we sure we will do better? It is easier said than done. All
right, Leo Joseph is saying, Baba, you spent 8 years fighting everyone and ended doing nothing. They learned from you a hypothetical attitude of 8 years. Wow. Is third term the sign of someone with character and honesty? He cannot fix electricity, train, and other cars infrastructure. Holier than thou, chief. Okay.
I think the rest of the comments are trying to blame the former president. He was elected in 1999, I believe. Baba, you are the father of them all.
This morning. They're saying, Baba, you're also part of it. I think the reason why most persons will not agree with the president is because it started from 1999, when he was also elected. So people are saying, if you are telling us, it means you're also part of it. Well, it's a fine place to leave the discussion this morning. I just believe that the right leaders can actually do something good, because look at what Lee Kuan Yew did, with Singapore. Look at Japan. Japan is 70% rocky area, but look at what the country is now. From third world country to first world country, we can do better as a nation. My name is Oluwayemi Adelakun. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'll see you next time.
And I'll ask a rhetorical question. Can Nigeria become a world power? Well, you answered that. My name is Andrew Poido, saying bye for now.